Here is the latest Higher Summits forecast brought to you by our friends at the Mount Washington Observatory.
Weather above treeline in the White Mountains is often wildly different than at our trailheads. Before you hike, check the Higher Summits forecast at mountwashington.org. Weather observers working at the nonprofit Mount Washington Observatory write this elevation-based forecast every morning and afternoon. Search and rescue teams, avalanche experts, and backcountry guides all rely on the Higher Summits forecast to anticipate weather conditions above treeline. You should too. Go to mountwashington.org or text forecast to 603-356-2137. Okay, this is your forecast for June 9th, Friday, and June 10th, Saturday. It looks like we have some thunderstorm activity coming in for Friday with the potential for small hail, frequent lightning, and sudden wind gusts. Showers and storms will wind down with the loss of daytime heating Friday night, except for the higher summit areas. Low temps will fall below freezing, and a wintry mix will again result in icy trail conditions for at least overnight and then into the first half of Saturday. So make sure that you bring your spikes, because you never know. The trails could be slick and icy, and you may require them. All right, so the low is looking like it'll finally break down Saturday afternoon, and temperatures will slowly improve over the entire forecast period. So be safe out there, be prepared, and have fun. So Friday, in the clouds with a wintry mix transitioning to rain. Chance of afternoon thunderstorms, little to no additional snow accumulations, high in the upper 30s. Winds west shifting south midday, then back to west later at 5 to 20 miles an hour, becoming light and variable at times, with a wind chill rising to 20 to 30 above. Friday night in the clouds with rain showers likely early, then a slight chance of a wintry mix after midnight. Little to no additional snow accumulations, with a low in the 30s, winds shifting northwest at 5 to 20 miles per hour, increasing to 15 to 30 miles an hour, with a wind chill 15 to 25 above. And Saturday, in the clouds with rain showers likely, chance of afternoon thunderstorms. So a high in the upper 30s, winds northwest at 20 to 35 miles per hour, with a wind chill 25 to 30 above.
From the Woodpeckers studio in the great state of New Hampshire, welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stomp.
Stomp. So episode 109, we've got a whole clown car over there that you're dealing with, right?
Yeah, this is like toxic masculinity. This is as much of it as I've ever experienced in one room. So, but it's all good.
Stomp, I actually had a question for you before we get started. Do you have, and I feel like I know this, but you have a bunch of tattoos, right?
Yeah, I've got a few, but none quite like the one that you're about to talk about.
All right, so I am, every once in a while, like I'll see a horrendous tattoo, like a mountain themed tattoo. And I saw this come through like one of the Appalachian Trail groups. And I mean, I'm sure that the person's a very nice person and is happy with the tattoo. And I think that's great. But
Dave, is that yours?
It's not. I'm gonna for the record. I don't know if I can post this because I don't want the person to find out. But it's basically like this person had another tattoo and they covered it up with this tattoo of a bear that has mountains growing off of its back, and it says like the mountains are calling and I must go. And I hope this person isn't a listener. I don't think they are, but I just wanted to start the show off to show that Stomp because I thought that was.
It almost looks like a face or something. Like,
it's a bear, and then it's a bear with the Appalachian Trail marker on it, and then mountains and then there's a bird flying in the background, I think. So,
yeah.
Mike, where'd you find that?
It was on some social media site, and immediately I was like, "Oh man, I want to like it, but I don't want to be mean, but I just had to pull that because I thought Stomp would get a kick out of it."
It wouldn't have looked bad if they'd gone with a moose, but the bear just doesn't work.
So that's maybe I'll post it up on the Facebook page, but I'm afraid that it may get back to the person and they may feel sad, but we'll see. Are any of the tattoos you have, Stomp, or do you regret them, or are they all like excellent in your view?
I enjoy them. Yeah, I don't regret any of them really. They all have a story, which I think that's probably the best way to go about getting tattoos if you're going to get any. I mean, just to get some random thing that doesn't mean anything to you or have a backstory, I think that's destined for a laser treatment to get rid of at some point in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I have a tattoo that I have tattoo regret. So I have like a Irish flag on my calf with like a little shamrock that I got when I was like 18. You know, it's like, okay, I've had a few bears. I'm going to go up to Hampton Beach. Because back then you could only get tattoos up at Hampton Beach and a few other places in New Hampshire. So I did the rite of passage and got the Irish pride thing. And I no longer have Irish pride. So at some point I'm going to take a look at my health savings account and get a little laser treatment on that thing.
Yeah, I know people that went through that process. It's pretty nasty. It does not happen fast. It's a very long process to get that ink out of your skin. Would not want to go through that.
I've got gum surgery I have to get, and then maybe I'll do the tattoo stuff. So I'll keep you updated. All right, Stomp. Enough about nonsense tattoos. We've got breaking news, and this is huge. We need to know the Stomp's Mrs. I probably should have told you to have Mrs. Stomp come down, but Mrs. Stomp has a new kitten. Everybody, like, I think out of everything that we've ever posted on the Instagram account, I've never seen traffic. I mean, this thing blew up. This little cat. It's an orange blob of fur. It's cute.
Oh God!
Tell us everything about it.
Yeah, well, we went down to the Sunapee region this last weekend to pick up the cat. And by the way, Sunapee region is really beautiful. You guys hike down there, I'm sure, sometimes or another. Man, I was impressed. Really rugged. Lake Sunapee itself was awesome. We have a name. We picked the name, but first I think we have to talk about some gender dysphoria, maybe, if that's the proper word. So here's the story. We thought we were getting a female tabby, a ginger, and ends up about a week and a half ago, we got a text from the woman who had the litter, and she said that the testicles had dropped. So she thought that it was a female cat. It was actually a male cat. So that really threw a wrench in the works. And we weren't really sure if we were going to do it. And we hemmed and hawed about, whether the male cat would be great with these two female tuxedos. Long story short, we decided to go for it because we felt bad for the little guy. So we picked the cat up, and obviously we can't name this male cat Tina.
You can.
Okay, so Tina was out. I guess we could, yeah, sure. But so we're driving home, and for several days we were trying to think of names. And by the time we were getting back to the house, I mean, at that point, we're looking at, fire hydrants going by and like, hey, how about we call him Fire Hydrant? It was just getting pathetic, getting awful. And then I realized, hey, how about Forest? So that sort of stuck. But then after a while of thinking, we realized everybody would think, oh, great, Forrest Gump. Yeah. That's so lame. Like, who would name their cat Forrest Gump? So Mrs. Stomp did some digging. She's the linguist in the family, apparently, and found out that forest has a connection to the ancient Greek and xylophone. So we looked up the word xylo, which is XYLO, which essentially means wood, but there's also a connection to forest. So if you take xylo and then separate it from phone is audio. Ultimately, the name of the cat means forest sounds. And it was just like, that's it, xylo. Yeah, it's a very interesting name, but it had meaning for us. So forest sounds, xylo. And it fits them. Yeah.
I like it.
Thanks.
Well, welcome, Xylo. And then the other cats, is the fear that, like, are the other cats spayed or whatever it is?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll have to take care of this cat, I think, within 6 months or so. I think at 6 months is the time to do that, shots and all that stuff. But Daphne has been an absolute darling. She's taken the cat as her own, and just today I got home and Daphne was licking and cleaning and preening the kitten, and Luna's very standoffish. But something must have happened to Luna when she was little, because she's never accepted any cat. Period. Yeah, but Daphne is just like, it's just breaking my heart. It's so beautiful. It's like, oh, so sweet. We were hoping that would be the case, and it is. So,
well, congratulations. I know that the new parents are busy there with their cats, and I'm glad that Daphne, I'm afraid Daphne's going to form an alliance and make Luna's life miserable, but we'll see.
It's possible. It
is. All right. So, welcome to episode 109 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. Tonight, we are joined once again by humorist, author, and self-proclaimed worst hiker in New Hampshire, Ken Bosse. So, welcome, Ken.
Thanks for having us back.
No problem. And he's got his crew with him. So Ken was last with us on episode 36. Wow, that's a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
No kidding. Yeah, November 2021, along with his friend Ian. So Ian's back, and they're going to be talking about his first. He was originally talking. They came originally to talk about his first book. They said it would be fun, a hilarious journey learning to hike the New Hampshire 48, which was published in November 29th of 2001. His second book, they said they wanted more, a hilarious journey hiking the New Hampshire 52 with a view, was published a year later. Now tonight Ken joins us for a second time to talk about his latest book. They said teach us more, solo, winter hiking, and overnighters. So he's got a trifecta of books to talk about here. So graciously, the profits from all of Ken's books are donated to the New Hampshire Search and Rescue. So tonight, Ken is joined by trail mates Ian and Dave, who will share their tales of adventure and elder abuse. So Ken's last visit had us all in stitches, and we can't wait to catch up with him and his goon squad. So we are live in-house at the Woodpecker Studio. I'm Mike.
And I'm Stomp. Let's get started.
Jeez, that was a tongue twister.
Yeah.
So 3 books, Ken.
Can I clear the air a little bit?
Yes, go ahead.
So much like Stomp just adopted a little kitty, Ian and I adopted a fellow hiker years ago, and that's Ken. So it's really, I don't know if we're part of his gang or perhaps he's part of our gang.
I don't think that's how it worked out.
So, Dave, you're younger than Ken, right? Are you closer to Ian's age?
I am, yeah.
Yeah.
I split the difference.
Got it. So
nice. Close enough.
Makes sense. So, Ken, I think that it's good for you to be around these young people.
Yeah, it keeps me juvenated.
Or juvenile, yeah.
Juvenile.
Excellent. All right. So more with this crew in a minute, but Stomp, first we wanted to get a review. So you were working the music and entertainment on the White Mountain Endurance race on Mount Chocorua. So can you give us a summary? How did that event go?
Yeah, well, we're all stuck in this rain cycle at the moment. So it was a bit rainy, misty that morning. I got there around 7, set up, and there's a couple hundred runners that were running. I mean, the track took the runners up to the summit of Chocorua, more or less, and then back down. The winner came in at 2 hours, 21 minutes, and that's really impressive. It was a slick course because of the wet granite and whatnot, but by the way, Larson showed up with his family, Sarita and their children, got to see the new baby. And Travis, I don't know if you remember Travis, but Travis and Larson scored the fastest known time for the Skyline Loop in Waterville. So Travis came in second place, which is phenomenal.
Surprised.
Yeah, it was really neat. But long story short, I played a ton of music, and listeners were coming over. I just want to shout out hi to Chris Paquette. I guess it was his first race, and now he's hooked. James Phoenix stopped by. Alex Folsom brought me a nice Nebula 586 brew, which was just absolutely phenomenal. It's always nice having a brew when you're stuck spinning tunes for 7 hours.
Yeah, really.
Addie and Scott, thanks for coming by, and thanks for listening. And I guess they were listening to some of the EDM mixes that we put up there. And of course, Marilyn Stiles. She crushed her personal record by 15 minutes, so it was a good day. And apparently towards the end of the day, there was a fire on the Hammond Trail. So things got a little bit tense. From the night before, a lightning bolt hit a log. There was a fire, apparently, this is rumor from what I heard. There was a fire brewing inside a log, a hollowed out log, and the rain had suppressed it overnight. So it didn't erupt until that afternoon, like 3 o'clock, and runners were still coming in. Had that rain probably not happened, they might not have had a race, believe it or not. So pretty wild.
Well, so, Stomp, can I ask a question about the music?
Sure.
Did you play any Kool in the Gang, or was it all your EDM stuff?
I play everything from... I did not play Kool in the Gang, actually, but mostly EDM, a lot of country, a lot of pop, folk, rock, spanning the decades. I mean, I play a little bit of everything, so it's a really nice mix for everybody. But that race is more of a party type of vibe, so you tend to keep it upbeat.
Yeah. Did they have like food trucks and ice cream and stuff there?
Yep. Yeah. Ice cream. They had a crepe truck and some guy. Ledge Brewery, I believe it was Ledge Brewery. They came by and were giving out beer, so it was a really nice time.
Excellent.
Yeah. It's such a great event. Next one up is the COG.
Yeah. I got to get back to that one next year in Chocorua, so I think maybe I'm going to skip Mount Washington, but we'll see. But yeah, so speaking of wildfires, Stomp, the Canadian wildfires continue to rage. You said that Stosh mentioned that he's seen some heavy stuff in the Adirondacks in New York. So what's the vibe up in New Hampshire right now with that? People are asking on social media about whether they're going to choke to death when they're hiking this weekend.
I think the forecast is improving for this weekend. I think the rains helped a lot, but I think midweek when I was running up locally here, it was that orangey hue, and it was sort of oppressive running in it. But I think we're in a cycle where it's not going to be bad for the next few days from the research I did earlier, which is good.
Yeah, and I don't want to discount people's concerns about the air quality or anything, but there are a lot of people that did not grow up with grandparents who live in a mobile home and smoke 2 packs of cigarettes and, for 10 years. So I think that we'll survive.
Yeah, yeah. It's the attack of the clouds.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, I had to laugh because I'm just like, I was thinking back to my younger days, and I was like, I was just around cigarette smoke constantly when I was little, and nobody seemed to care, but...
Yeah. Anyway. Interesting stuff. I mean, the origin of this is a whole other debate, but we don't want to dive into that now. That would take all night.
Yeah. It certainly makes for good sunrise photos.
Right.
Which is good. All right, Stomp. And now you put an article in here about a new long trail idea, the 14,000-mile American Perimeter Trail, which I feel like this is a thing already.
I know. This sounds like it's right up your alley, Ken.
Yeah.
It's the perimeter of America, 14,000 plus miles. And some fellas planning on tackling it soon. This is an NBC News story. And I'm not sure when they're starting, but good luck. That's going to be a hell of a trip.
Yeah. I mean, actually, back in the 70s, I already did it, but he can go for it again if he wants to.
That's your next book, right? You know what that sounds like is Cheswick to me.
It does sound like a Cheswick type of adventure. I think he's trying to get one up on him.
Yeah. Well,
and you know what'll happen after that? Cheswick will come back and do it twice or do it backwards or add Canada to it or Mexico,
Correct.
Wild.
So, all right, Stomp. So for this next one here, I do tend to take a lot of credit for your work in various situations. So I thought that this was an interesting story. So there's a Sherpa. We talked about sort of the situation with Sherpas on Mount Everest. We got a guest coming up in a couple of weeks. I think that'll be able to shed even more light on that. Really experienced high mountaineer. But this story came out. It's a Sherpa that saved a Malaysian climber's life on Mount Everest. Apparently, based on the story, this climber was somewhere above Camp 4, had some issues with his breathing, passed out, and I think he was sort of separated from his guide group, and a Sherpa that had been working in his own guide service came upon him and was able to rescue him and basically muster up a team of people to get this guy down to Camp 4, get him some oxygen and save his life. And it turned out that after the climber had gotten back to civilization, he was on like a number of shows talking about the incident. He didn't give credit to the Sherpa at all for saving him. Apparently the Sherpa carried him part of the way, and eventually, the Sherpa found out that this guy even blocked him on social media for whatever reason. The person did turn around and and give some credit, but it was sort of like more credit to the guide services than the individual Sherpa that had saved him. So just thought it was a little bit interesting that somebody would save someone else's life and then not give them credit.
Yeah, that is a little odd.
Sherpa shaming.
Yes.
It's not right.
Yeah, it is interesting. I feel like there's more to this story, though, because after I read the first couple of articles and it sort of painted this really bad picture of the Malaysian climber, then later articles gave a little bit more detail. And it turns out that the Sherpa owns his own guide service, and he isn't just some low-level worker. He's somebody that actually is has some juice within the climbing community. So I don't know what to think.
Radio silence on that one.
Yeah, I know nobody has an opinion, so moving on. Stomp, I learned a new thing this week about, how on all trails in Gaia, you have those maps that you can use. Most of them are open street name maps.
Right, yep.
So there was a controversy in my town where the town had designated this section of trails as a park officially, and that gave them the ability to block a strip club that was supposed to come into that area.
Okay.
So they had designated this as a park, and then development went on, and they basically blocked that from coming in, and they decided they're going to develop this particular area. So they named the park after this person to honor them. And they decided they're going to move the location of the park across town. So they already signed the ordinance a year or two ago, and they moved it. So the name of the park is Margaret Rice Park. So they moved it probably about 2 miles away to this other section of trails, but nobody ever put in the change request with any of the mapping companies. So there was a discussion online about hey, this is moved, but everyone was saying, well, Margaret Rice Park is in the old location that's now being developed, and every map you look at shows it there. So I started nerding out, and I was like, how can I get Margaret Rice Park changed? And I was able to sign on to OpenStreetMaps, create a profile, and then actually update the place names to move Margaret Rice Park from down by the Merrimack River up about 2 miles to where it's supposed to be. So if anybody's ever curious about place names and how to change them, one of the ways that you can do that is actually create an account on OpenStreetMaps, and then you can add place names, you can change place names, you can add trail names and edit all kinds of stuff that actually shows up on all trails and on Gaia, any platform that uses OpenStreetMaps.
That's interesting. You guys use any of that stuff?
Ian does.
I use Gaia. I've never used OpenStreetMaps though.
Yeah. Well, one of the layers so when you sign into Gaia, you can pick layers of maps that you want to use, and one of the selections is OpenStreetMaps, and it has all the trails on it. So a lot of people actually do choose that as a layer for it. So it's just one of the layers that's available.
I mean, I am dying to know who Margaret Rice is.
I don't know who she is either. I was looking that up. I'm sure she was a very nice person, but they basically just created that park to block this certain development and then decided to move it around. But I just thought it was funny. They changed the name 2 years ago, but no one ever took the time to move it on the maps. So I'm doing good work there, Stomp.
Gonna get straight through the pearly gates.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. All right, so moving on to the next story here. Stomp, you got this from Grandpa Stomp. A Tennessee woman accused of hiring a dark web hitman to kill her hiking buddy's wife. So if I can summarize this, as far as I can see, so you guys have it right. Like, so Ken, you don't
stuff.
When you were looking for hiking friends, you looked for men to hike with, right? So that the wife wouldn't give you a hard time, right?
In the dark web or the regular web?
Well, the regular web. So, anyway,
yeah.
So apparently this woman met a hiking friend on Match.com. She was like, I don't know if she was looking for just a friend or whatever happened there, but she started hiking with this gentleman, and he was married, and I guess she was spurned, lover or something, and she basically went and hired a hitman to kill the wife, but they met through hiking. So I guess she helped him with his Appalachian Trail hike. She would make reservations at hostels and rest points and watch his vehicle. And, at some point, she started like getting jealous of the wife, and, the wife reported that her car started getting keyed, and she received all these unpleasant phone calls, and eventually the girlfriend on the side apparently tried to hire a hitman, right, Stomp?
Yeah, that's right. So,
did you say that they met through Eric Sweet's dating app?
No, but whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, this woman ordered a murder for hire on January 11th, according to the criminal complaint. And it goes into all kinds of details, but at some point she was saying, I hope you both fall off a cliff and die. So I guess there was plenty of lead up to this.
Yeah, I feel like the most interesting part of this story is that, and apparently, I don't know how to get on the dark web. I've heard of the dark web, but I don't know exactly how you get on there. But apparently there's a site that's called Online Killers Market, which offers hitmen for hire. So if there's any law enforcement listening, that's a good site. That's a good site to hang out on, and you might be able to crack some crime.
Gee whiz. Yeah, this person was losing it. Unpleasant phone calls, using electronic devices to disguise voices. Unbelievable. It's a crazy story. Looking at the Strava app for information as to where they were going. That's
just an idea for a new business anyway. Start a site, cap a hiker. I don't know.
Yeah. Stomp, would Mrs. Stomp care if you went hiking with just another female hiker?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. There are very few that I will actually be able to go and do that with. And I think that's appropriate anyway, You don't want to cause any issues.
Yeah, I get that too.
Absolutely.
I do it.
Yeah. Group settings, no problem. But if it was like a solo thing, then that's very, very rare. Far and few between. Don't want to create the impression of or perception of anything untoward going on.
Yeah, I agree.
How about you?
As well? Yeah, same here. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. It would seem a little weird.
Then, of course, there's Ken. He's out with the hiker babes all the time. So I don't know what that's all about.
My, oh my.
We'll talk about that later. That's really impressive, that site, actually. I had no idea that existed.
I mean, if the 10 of them going on a hit on my wife, think of the money they can save.
Right.
Crowdfund it.
All right. So we've all established no solo female hiking together, I guess, at this point. But
correct.
Speaking of female hikers, Heather Anderson, who is a legendary thru hiker, she is known by Anish, is her trail name. She recently, we talked about this a couple of episodes ago, and we left it on a cliffhanger that she was trying to complete the fastest known time for the 250-mile section of the Appalachian Trail that runs through Pennsylvania. And she was successful doing that. And we'll include this article in the show notes. It's from Backpacker Magazine. It's pretty interesting. She's sort of gone through a tough time around, she set the fastest known time for the Pacific Crest Trail dipped her toes into a couple of other like speed hiker situations and ultra running, and sort of felt like, maybe I don't belong in this group. Like, I'm not this super athlete. I just, I persevere, and it's a different sort of skill set to do these long trails versus the ultra running community. So she sort of questioned herself a little bit, but it sort of talks through how she sort of re-embraced the idea of trying to do some fastest known times. And it's a good article, and it's sort of good to even see somebody that's this, accomplished of an athlete sort of go through their own struggles and come out the other side feeling like they found a balance and they found happiness in their lives. So good for her.
Mm-hmm. I know Anish.
You do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I also know a nephew too, but
I knew that was coming. Excellent.
That's good.
This is going to be a long night, so I'm going to walk into these all night. All right, Stomp, you pulled this one here. So this is a West Coast trail hiker who lost his eye on a hike, is now fighting a brain infection. So this is a really uplifting story. You want to talk about this?
I'm on a roll.
Yeah.
I had to put this one in here because you have to hear the story. It's worth talking about. So this father and son duo had been planning a trip, and they were on this iconic path, and it's a West Coast trail. On day 3 of the hike, to avoid an extra muddy section, Brett's father decided to walk along the trunk of a fallen tree. That's when he lost his footing, falling on a branch, sending it through his eye socket and lodging into his brain.
Yikes.
You don't hear that too often, do you? That's why I added it. I'm like, wow. It just goes to show you what's possible out there if you're not careful.
Did they have a splint?
Hike safeguard. A 14-inch stick was poking out of his face. So the rescuers arrived hours later and got him to the hospital. But now, unfortunately, this fella is dealing with an infection that's being treated with antibiotics, but it's still up in the air as to what's going to happen here. Full recovery will take months. Amazing. There is a GoFundMe fundraiser, which we'll include in the show notes, just so you can check it out if you want to donate. Yeah, watch out for those twigs.
yeah, I know that guy too.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
All right, well, I've got one more. So we'll skip the story that's coming up next on the script Stomp, but I got one more uplifting one. So a hiker initially thought to have been shot was actually the victim of a horse kick to the head. So it's rough out there right now. So this happened in Marin County. So I think that's in California. So a suspicious death of a hiker in Marin County last week may have been caused by a kick from a horse, the sheriff's office said. So 6:51 on a Friday, an emergency call reported a man suffering from an apparent fall and a head wound. This man was identified he was 82 years old. He was taken to the hospital where he unfortunately died of his injuries. Initially, the medical staff reported that the victim appeared to have a ballistic wound to his head. The sheriff's office now says that the observation does not appear to be valid. At the conclusion of the autopsy, it was determined based on all available evidence that the injuries sustained were caused by a blunt force strike. And the sheriff's office is now investigating the possibility that the subject was kicked by a horse. So apparently a horse was seen along the fire road when emergency responders were tending to this gentleman. So they suspect that it was just a freak accident and the horse kicked him.
Ian's still trying to recover from the last one.
Okay.
That's a terrible story.
It's a way to kick the bucket.
Yeah, it is. And then moving on to the next one, a runner is hospitalized after being attacked by aggressive cows on the Colorado Trail.
Wow. This is tying into your theory about all these animals just sort of losing it, like the whales, the orcas.
Yeah, I think so. Aggressive cattle have been recently charging runners on this popular path. So runners are having a hard time steering clear, get it?
Get it.
Of aggressive cattle on the Meadowlark Trail near Superior, Colorado, a Boulder open space trail. So as far as I can tell, this looks to be one of those trails like on the Appalachian Trail, they have the ponies that will lick your salt off of you.
Yeah.
This looks like that type of trail where horses just graze along the trail and people hike. And apparently some of these cows are, not happy. And I think that it has to do with mothers protecting their calves. So rangers responded within 15 minutes to a report of this runner, and the runner was taken to the hospital. Her condition is unknown. But there's been multiple reports of trail users reporting aggressive cattle. So if you're on the Meadowlark Trail, just be careful, because there's nothing more terrifying than looking behind you to see a herd of very large mooing animals charging at you.
It's like Monty Python, Holy Grail.
Yes. What are they so upset about? I mean, what's the beef?
Oh, boy. How do you come up with these off the top of your head? I don't know.
I am not right in the head. I'm sorry.
They're really on point too, which is what makes them funny.
I was going to hike with that other guy. We were supposed to meet up at the trailhead, and he said he'd keep an eye out for me.
Oh boy!
Oh, this is great.
Yeah, it's so, and I have to thank our friend Al for sending in those last two stories. He's fantastic. He's as close to a spirited animal as I can find, because I don't know too many people. I like to do it, but Al seems to like to do it too, is to look and find these weird hiking stories. So he's great.
You know what's really funny? Every time I look on the script, whenever you do a shout out to Al, I think it's shout out to AI for sending along. I'm like, oh, hey, what's AI got to do with this? It's funny.
It's our friend Al. So, and then Al did send in one other piece of a news article, which I thought was pretty interesting, Stomp. So he picked up this article that had search and rescue data for New York State from 2012 to 2022, and it was interesting to compare their numbers to New Hampshire. And obviously, New York's a larger state, but they have about 300 rescues per year. And they indicated they rescued 5,400 people across the state from 2012 to 2022. And that compares to around 190 per year in New Hampshire. So interesting comparisons there. So slowly over time, I'm starting to build more and more data around states that give that information around search and rescue activities, so we can get an idea of what's normal and what's not.
Yeah, no kidding. What do you think the reasoning is? Just your gut?
I think it's a bigger state. I think that in the article, and I'll link this in the show notes, that it breaks down, there's a lot of different regions where search and rescues go. And I think the population's much bigger than New Hampshire. So you got to imagine the volume of elderly walk-offs in New York has to be probably 10 times the number that you'd see in New Hampshire, I'd guess.
Yeah. Okay.
So they did say that missions spiked during the pandemic, that in 2020 and 2021, that they saw a significant increase, and they had some days where they were doing 3 or 4 missions per day on the weekends in the Adirondacks. And they said that the largest volume of missions are in the high peak wilderness. They said that the, Mount Marcy via Van Hovenberg is the busiest trail. So that's basically their Franconia Ridge. And then they said there's Mount Colden via the Avalanche Pass is another one for them. So I guess there's a slide that's popular for hikers to summit, and sometimes they've got to deal with rescues up there. So
yeah,
New York's pretty busy.
Yeah, totally. Hey, I discovered this really cool app. No, I didn't discover it. It was, sorry about that. I want to give credit to Colby Chase, actually, a buddy of mine from Moosehead Painting. He found this app and let me know about it. That's how I discovered it. And it's called Merlin, and it's by Cornell. Is anybody familiar with this? I think it was cool for hikers for sure. It's a bird finding app, and it's free, no advertisements. So Cornell put this app together, and basically you can ID birds. First, you download a bird pack from the region that you live in, and I downloaded the Northeast just a little earlier. But you can identify a bird if you capture it on your phone. You can ID the sound. You can capture the sound. It will identify it. So it's almost like what's that app there that identifies music?
Shazam.
Shazam. Yeah, Shazam. It's just like that, but it's for birds, but it's also visual as well. So check it out. It's free, and it's absolutely amazing. And the other neat thing about it is that Colby was telling me that if you play the sound of the bird, it draws them in. So it's so authentic. It's actual recording, so you can draw certain species in and check it out. So, yeah, it's called Merlin.
I'm going to check it out, Stomp. I have this weird thing going on in the mornings with this guy that he's a bird photographer. So I run in the town park, and like I have my routine, and then this guy has his routine. And for a long time, we would just pass each other, and I would just say hi. And then one time, I don't know what the bird was, but it was like a big bird, like a hawk or something. I was super excited that I saw it. So I talked to the guy for the first time, and I didn't know that you're supposed to like whisper, because bird people, like, you don't want to disturb the bird. So I was like, hey, there's a hawk up there. And he was like jumping, and he's all quiet and stuff. And he's like, okay, thanks. He just wanted to get rid of me. But I made up for it because now I know not to talk to him. So the other morning, there was like 6 deer in the field where I usually stop and take a picture. And he was like walking the other way, so he would have missed the deer. So I ran up to him, and I was like waving my hands to him, but I didn't say anything. And he looked at me like I was crazy, but he looked at me, and then I pointed, and then I whispered, and I was like, there's 6 deer on the field. And then he just like looked at me. I don't think he wanted to go take a picture of the deer, but I think he felt so bad that I was like so excited about it that he probably just went to go take a picture. But I'm going to tell him about this app now.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, it's really, really top tier. It's a great app. It's amazing.
Oh, maybe I should just leave the guy alone. What do you think? I feel like I should just leave him alone.
Come up to him every day with something new, like, hey.
Oh, and I get so excited. Like every once in a while, I'd be like, "There's a duck in the other part of the pond." So
he might put a hit out on you.
He may have to go to the dark web. Anyway, start.
All right. So we're
advertisers.
up to our first sponsor of the night, CS Instant Coffee. I think this is definitely the time to start prepping for your summer backpacking, right? So CS Instant Coffee, your one coffee solution, anywhere, anytime. Search CS Instant Coffee. And then our second sponsor of the evening here is Base Lake Coasters, and I'm putting the plug out there for Father's Day. If you want to get a great gift for fathers, grandfathers, and the whole gang, Base Lake Coasters. They create unique, beautiful, functional, and expertly laser engraved coasters with topographic maps of the 4,000 footers of New Hampshire and more. These coasters are handmade on Cape Cod from slate, quarried in the United States, and provide a durable and heat-resistant surface for your drinks. Each coaster features intricate detailing of any mountain topography for the location of your choice. Base Lake Coasters will work with you on your custom hand-designed coasters for any street or topographic map. Let's just say anywhere on Earth or beyond. So visit baselake.com today to explore a full range of topographic map coasters and use the code SLASR10, it's SLASR10, at checkout for 10% off your first order. Of course, you can get your free stickers at Ski Fanatics on Exit 28 in Campton and down in Ballardvale, Andover, Mass, off of Route 93, Descombe Road at Spinner's Pizza Parlor. And we only had one coffee donation this time around, but it was pretty cool. It was a very, I don't want to say lengthy, but it was a thorough explanation of an individual that had sort of put hiking away, and, put it in the closet and in the basement and all this stuff. And he came across the podcast, and I guess we inspired him to dig out his hiking poles in his backpack to get out there again. So it was really neat. It's on the Instagram page, his actual letter that he sent to us, and check it out. It's really, it's very nice. And thank you very much. And that was Mike from Western Mass.
Yeah, Mike, definitely proud of you for getting out there. Keep at it, one step at a time. And Ken, we're going to talk about Mike when we interview you later on. I want to give you a little bit of background on it and get your perspective on it. But Mike, we got the letter, and we're thinking about you, and definitely get out there and reclaim that hike that hiking mentality that you wanted to have.
Yeah, no doubt.
I read that. He's certainly on the upswing.
Oh, you read it as well? Yeah. It's pretty neat.
It really is.
Awesome.
Excellent. Right. And then Stomp, can you give us an update on what's the latest on the Don't Break Into My Car clings there? The order is it here or is it coming?
It's en route. It landed in Chicago from Shanghai a couple days back, and I checked today. Today is June 8th, Thursday, and it is essentially in Ohio. It's just taking 1,000 years to get here, but we should have the package of clings within a few days, and I actually hope to get it to you, Mike, by Sunday if I get it by Saturday. So hopefully that'll work out that way.
Well, if you get it Saturday, we'll see each other at Reckless, so we can.
Right. Yeah. That's what I meant. Sorry.
Yeah. Perfect.
But it's en route. So thanks everybody for being patient. But yeah.
I guess we pulled the trigger on the orders a little early, but we got excited. So sorry.
Yeah. And let's see. Reckless. We'll see you at Reckless. And EMS. Just want to say thank you for EMS for supporting us for these many months. And again, we'll see you at Reckless this weekend, Saturday around 3-ish after the 48 Peaks Alzheimer's hikes. It's going to be a great time.
Yep. And next, this is the part of the show where we talk about beer. I'm not drinking Stomp. I am down 17 pounds, and I got 3 more pounds to go for my goal weight from Mount Washington, but I am going to start drinking again soon.
Yeah, like after the hike, right? Or after the run.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I think I've lost a couple pounds, but really haven't changed much at all. How's your training going?
Okay. I'm not doing much. I mean, I'm doing like 25, 30 miles a week, but I'm not doing anything extra. It's just my normal running.
Yeah. I've got it sort of dialed in. I'm feeling really good, actually. It's psychological. The 2 things I really focus on now is just looking 3 to 4 feet in front of me. Never look ahead. That just blows your mind, like, oh my God. So I'm always looking a couple feet ahead, bird steps, and I'm finding the tangent. Remember Dave Dunham, find the tangent? So cutting the corners and just hugging the corner as you're taking it just to shave off feet here and there. But I'm doing pretty good. I'm definitely not nervous anymore about it.
Yeah,
so
we'll be fine.
Yeah. Hopefully the weather works out. My goodness, next week, the long range forecast is looking more or less like this. And they just got 4 inches of snow up on Mount Washington just 2 days ago or so. I could foresee them pulling the plug and maybe making it just half the race, but we'll see.
No, that's not going to happen. Don't take your negativity out the door. So, all right, Stomp, any recent hikes for you?
No, none whatsoever. Just doing the running. How about yourself?
Yeah, same with me. I just went local. I didn't get up north last weekend. I think it was just because it was raining out, but I am going hiking. I might do something Friday night, and then because I'm heading up to Maine, and then I am going to hike on Saturday before Reckless. So I may do the Kinsmans. I may do the Presidentials. I got to figure out what the weather's going to look like.
Gotcha. How about you guys? Ken, you been out?
No, the last hike I did was a couple of months ago, and I did the Chippewa Trail up Black Mountain.
Beautiful.
It was all ice, so coming down, I really wrecked my knee. So
yeah,
now it's going to be a hike by hike episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Ian?
My last one was a couple of weeks ago. I adopted the Hale Brook Trail a few years ago, so I went up and I did some maintenance on that.
Where is that exactly?
Right on Zealand Road, going up Hale
Brook. Gotcha. Okay, got it. Yep. Was it a mess?
It actually wasn't bad because I took care of it last year. When I got the trail, it wasn't taken care of for a few years, so it was terrible. But now that I've taken care of it in the fall, it's not bad to do in the spring. And I have a co-adopter that's starting with me this year, too.
So do you have the entire trail?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
2.2 miles.
Gotcha. Oh, that's awesome.
What does it mean when you say like the trail was in terrible condition? Like what typically do you see when a trail's in bad shape?
So essentially all the water pillars are filled in with leaves, and then usually debris, branches, and everything will fall down on top of where you have to move all of the stuff to get it out of the water bar.
Blowdowns too.
So blowdowns, if it's something that we can do with a hand crosscut saw, we're good to go. But if it's something that you need a chainsaw for, we just mark it GPS and let our manager know, and they'll take care of it.
Interesting.
And do you do anything with the Fire Warden's Trail that cut over to North Twin, or is that just you don't touch that?
I don't think the Forest Service even acknowledges that trail anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just maintained by people walking on it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a really nice trail, though. I like that one more than the Hale Brook Trail.
Yeah, I've never been up Halebrook. The only time I've ever been to Hale is through Zealand and Lendehand, which I think is a beautiful trail. But I would assume that Halebrook gets more traffic than Lendehand.
Yeah.
Cool. And Dave?
Last weekend I did Whiteface in Passaconaway. Great hike.
Yeah, absolutely. How'd you go about it?
Did Whiteface first, up the Blueberry Ledge, I believe trail it is. And
Yeah.
then, cut over the ridge to Passaconaway and then back down.
Dicey's Mill.
Yeah.
Oh, Dicey's.
Exactly.
The Haunted Trail. It's a great hike. Oh, excellent. All right.
Well, you guys have gotten out more than we have, so we gotta change that Stomp. Are you hiking at all this weekend, or are you just too busy?
Well, I have to get ready for the DJing thing, so I'm just going to run Saturday morning. Sunday I might with Mrs. Stomp, but we'll play it by ear. We're just down to the wire with this race, so I'm just all my efforts going into that right now. So we'll see.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. So we got more advertisers, Stomp. You want to do them?
Vaucluse gear. Want ventilation and less sweat on your back when backpacking? Check out Vaucluse backpack ventilation gear. Back sweat sucks in all types of weather and hikes. It's uncomfortable and a risk factor, causing your core temperature to fluctuate if it doesn't evaporate off your back. Vaucluse's ultralight ventilation backpack frame is an accessory that installs in your favorite pack, size 18 liters to 55 liters, creating a ventilating airflow gap between you and your pack. They're releasing their Generation 2 frame right now. It weighs only 4 ounces and handles the heaviest pack loads. Whether you're in hot or cold temps or have a pack with a curved frame, the ultralight ventilation backpack frame is a real game changer for ventilation and airflow. So visit VaucluseGear.com to order a ventilation frame today. Vaucluse is a fan of the podcast, and they have a nice promo code for us. It's SLASR for a $10 discount. So then that's SLASR. And then Alzheimer's. 48 Peaks Alzheimer's. The big weekend is here. So hike to fight Alzheimer's with 48 Peaks. Join over 450 hikers this summer as we hike New Hampshire's 4,000 footers, or create your own hiking adventure from a 52 of the View to a Prezi Traverse, or climb your favorite mountain. We'll be hosting our annual hiker celebration party at Reckless on June 10th. So make sure you register for 48 Peaks to join us. Go to alz.org/48 peaks for all the details. And that's alz.org/48, the number 48 peaks. Yeah.
Yes. It's going to be a big day on Saturday for 48 Peaks.
You down? You coming?
I'm coming, yeah. Yeah. I sent in I'm supporting Lynn's team. I sent in a little something there, and then I'm going to wear my purple shirt when I hike on Saturday and then head over to Reckless.
Excellent. Do you know what your route is yet?
I don't know yet. I'm going with my daughter, and her boyfriend want to do a 4,000 footer. So I'm just sort of like donating to Lynn's team and then going hiking and showing up. And then I might put together a team later on in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So
how many people in your crew?
I don't know. It's to be determined, but it's just going to be me and my daughter and her boyfriend hiking on Saturday.
Okay. Awesome. Do you want me to play any songs for you in particular?
Cool in the Gang.
You got it, bud. You got it.
Right.
It's time for SLASR's Guest of the Week. Very cool. Very cool. Very, 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 very cool.
This is our segment of the week, so we are welcoming Ken and his crew here. So, Ken, why don't you introduce yourself again for listeners? It's been a while since we've had you. Just give a little bit of background on yourself.
Sure. So my name is Ken Bosse, and I got into hiking in a serious way probably about 10 years ago. Started off with the 48 and then wrote a book on that. Did the 52, wrote a book on that. And then this last one was on solo hiking, winter hiking, and overnighters. And that's the third book that came out. All the profits go to New Hampshire Search and Rescue. And yeah, that's about it.
Excellent. And then you're here with your crew. So Ian, we've had you on before, and then we've got David as well. So Ian, why don't you reintroduce yourself and give a little bit of background, and then we'll let David say hello.
Yeah, I'm Ian. Kind of started when I was reading Ken's Facebook post that eventually turned into his book. But I was going from a more heavy lifting style of fitness to want to start hiking more. So I asked him if I could tag along for one of his hikes. Started hiking with him and Keith, and then started hiking with Dave, and that's kind of how I got here.
Great. And Dave, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my hiking started back about 15 years ago. I used to hike with a lady named Sue, who is now part of the Co-Host Trail. Wonderful lady. But before hiking with her, I actually used to run with her, and I was on a Reach the Beach team, and she recruited me for to start hiking. And later on, I'd like to chat a little bit about Reach the Beach and some of the recent developments, since both of you are runners. I did all 12 legs back in the day, but ultimately I started hiking with Sue, and that group grew a little bit, and then that group sort of changed with people moving, and then I hooked up with PK and Ian.
PK is Pastor Ken, by the way, for listeners.
Yeah. So Ken, was he like your hiking guru? Was he the one that like showed you the way, or were you guys learning at the same time?
No, Dave had a head start. He was hiking for a while before we met at Rotary in Raymond. We were both members of the Rotary Club. And I don't know if you're familiar with Rotary, but every meeting they do a happy dollar. And so you give $1 and say what you're happy about. So I was usually saying, I'm happy. I'm hiking in Pawtuckaway Park, and I did like a 13-miler, or I did a 7-miler, or whatever. And then Dave started approaching me saying, I hike a lot too. I hike up in the Whites. And so that started getting me interested about if I could go back and visit the 4,000 footer, because I had done a couple when I was like 19, and I did a couple when I was probably in my late 20s. But now at that time I was 59, and I'm like, oh boy, I don't know if I could do one. So there's a guy in my church, Keith. He's older. He's 10 years older than I am, but he was an avid runner all his life, and so I hooked up with him because he was retired. And I have a flex schedule, and I said, hey, could you go with me? And that's so Keith and I started hiking. And then Dave, heard we were hiking quite a bit, and he wanted to connect with us. And same thing with Ian. He wanted to connect with us. So the four of us kind of became the crew.
Great. And then as far as your writing, so you guys got together doing a bunch of hikes, and you eventually overcame the concern about whether you could do it at your age, and you made it through a number of different hikes and lists and things like that. You've done the 4,000 footers, 52 with a view. At what point did you come up with the idea of writing the books? And can you talk a little bit about your writing process?
Yeah, so the first hike I did was Mount Womback, and I just about died on it. I mean, I was like 50 pounds overweight. Really unconditioned. Like I said, I was just doing a lot of flat hiking in Pawtuckaway. And so I wrote a funny story about it on Facebook, because I have about 700 followers, 800 followers on Facebook. And people just loved it. And so I kept on hiking, obviously. And I don't know, somewhere up around the 6th or 7th mountain that I was writing these funny stories about how I almost died on every single one of them, people started saying, you need to put this in a book. And I'm not an author. And I was like, I don't want to write. I'm just having fun with this stuff. And then I thought, well, I don't want to, I'm not looking to make money off of this. So I thought, well, if I did write a book, and if I gave the money to Search and Rescue, that would be a big incentive for people to buy the book, just for the fact that they're donating to a worthy cause. So that's kind of how it started. That's how it took off. And then the public just started, after that book was written and published and read, the public just started coming back at me saying, you got to write another one. You got to write another one. And at that time I had already done probably 2/3 of the 52 without even knowing it. And so it was easy to knock that one out. That's how it kind of started. And these two guys can give you more information on the ludicrous that you would ever want to have. It's like, they just give you, they give me a lot of fodder.
I bet. And then just looking back, so your first two books, one was focused on the 4,000 footers and the second one was 52 with a View. Do you have a perspective, and a little bit of time's gone by now too, and I think about this quite a bit when I talk to people, and I almost encourage people to think about doing the 52 with a View first, because I think it's just a better list, and I think that it gives you sort of a better view of New Hampshire overall. But do you have, if you were going to give advice to people to talk about the difference between 52 with a View and 4,000 footers, how would you describe it and what advice would you give people?
I think it depends on the person. If it's a person that's just getting into hiking and, maybe they're older or out of shape a little bit, not conditioned, definitely start with, the easier 52s. What's that one?
Rogers Ledge.
It's the other one we do up in the Lakes region. Mount Roberts.
Oh, yeah.
Mount Roberts and Mount Shaw and some of the easier 52s with a View. Those would really be the best ones to start off on until you get conditioned. Young people in their 20s, they can probably tackle anything because they're, if they're fit anyway, they can do that stuff. But, and I think the other fact too is that a lot of the 48s don't even have views. And so if you're looking for the reward of getting views, then definitely do the 52 with a View because they all have great views.
Yeah. I mean, poor Ian's dealing with he's fixing that dumb trail up to nowhere. It's crazy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Big rock pile at the top.
Yeah. Actually, that's a good question, Ian. What is the deal with that rock pile up on top of a hill? Do you, as a trail maintainer, do they give you any advice about stacking that big rock pile on the summit, or
that was not my orientation? No,
it wasn't in the orientation. No. Are you supposed to poke that to make sure there's no hornet's nest inside of it?
I don't know if I'd want to because there probably is.
I hope somebody's listening that's in charge of the trail maintainers, and they can add that to your list of duties.
If the list of duties is pretty small, they don't want us to mess anything up.
Yeah,
I
get that.
Ever a case of leave no trace, that pile up there would be it. You got to take that thing apart. That's your next duty.
Yeah.
I did actually.
Way up.
Yeah, I did read that Eisenhower, the rock pile on top of Eisenhower's, they did take down a little bit. I guess they made it smaller.
This season?
Apparently, yeah. I don't know if that was because of the beehives up there or whatnot. But anyway, we're off on a little tangent here. But Ken, so now you've written the two books. You've now written the third book. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about the idea behind the third book? Because this new book is not so much about a list, but it's just about a couple of different topics. So how would you describe it?
Yeah, so people wanted me to write more. They've really been enjoying the books, and I was thinking, there are no more lists really. And I could do Maine and New Hampshire. Or Vermont and New Hampshire, Maine. Let me get the states right. Vermont and Maine. But I just thought, it's different. Solo hiking is a totally different feel from hiking with a group, and winter hiking is definitely, probably the most dangerous. People need to know some of the cautions that are involved with winter hiking. And then overnighters. A lot more people are doing overnighters and things like that. So I just thought I'd throw out some funny stories about that kind of stuff. And it came out good. It came out really good. I really like that third book.
You conveniently left out the terrifying 25 list.
Yeah. The whole trail on Cardigan. That was a fun one.
That's a great chapter. I had no idea. I heard rumors about that trail, but that was a nice chapter to read.
Have you ever done it?
No, but I was there with you reading the chapter. It was great. It was really well done.
Yeah. It was something.
Yeah, I've never done that one either. I bypassed it because I was with some friends and I didn't want to take them down that steep section because they weren't very experienced. But it looks a little daunting, so it's good. Now with the solo hiking, Ken, did you do? I feel like I can't remember when we talked last time. I feel like you were a lot of times hiking with friends. Is the solo hiking more of a new thing for you, or have you always been doing it?
Okay, so I'm going to tell the truth.
Yep.
The solo hiking came from the three of these goons relentlessly picking on me until I couldn't stand their company anymore. And then I said, I'm just going to go out on a trail by myself. And actually started enjoying it. So then they started pouting and crying and offering me money, saying, please come back and hike with me. And so I did. But I got to admit, you know what? I think the best hike I've hiked so far in my life was the solo winter hike of Mount Liberty. Because the first time we did Mount Liberty, I was with Dave and I think Keith and another gentleman, and it was socked in when we got to the top. So I never actually got the view. And so that day that I did it in the winter, it was a 360 view, and I think that's just a really gorgeous peak.
Yeah, I love it up there, and it's a tough hike. Do you get concerned at all, or do your loved ones get concerned at all about you going out there by yourself? Do they give you a hard time?
These guys do, because they don't want to see me expire. Then they wouldn't have any fun hiking. My wife just keeps taking out more insurance and saying, "I think you could do bigger mountains."
So no one's worried about you.
Yeah. No, I mean, truly, my wife does get concerned sometime, and I assure her that there are plenty of other hikers on the trail. I mean, I really don't do a solo of something that's really remote. Yeah.
And then what about the backpacking and overnighting, or the overnight trips? Is that something that's relatively new for you, or were you doing those all along?
No, we were hiking, and while we were hiking, the three of us just kept buying more gear for who knows why. You know how that is, right? Yep. And so the next thing you know, we're buying sleeping bags and air mattresses and pillows and stoves, and we really never did overnighters. And then Dave was like a real big driver behind this. Let's do some overnighters, and so we did. So we did a couple of them. I don't know how many are recorded in the book, but we've done a few of them, and it's a lot of fun.
Who of the three of you, who's the planner?
Not Ken.
Yeah.
Not Ken. Who's the idea person?
So typically it's Ian.
Usually if Dave and I set up a hike, it takes maybe 5 text messages. Yeah. If PK's involved, it's usually 25 to 35, if not more.
Is it because he's just asking a bunch of questions, or is he making excuses? What's his
excuses, the weather, all of it.
We suspect that on his phone he has a number of weather apps, which is awesome. I mean, we all use different places to check our weather before a hike. Unfortunately, he has like Vermont or New York as the location, because it's always
Antarctica.
Yeah.
The rainforest.
Now, do you guys, do you generally, when you're planning hikes, if he is giving like you a hard time about like, I don't want to go, whatever, do you, and I do this with my kids sometimes, like I'll basically just be like, all right, well, I'm leaving you. Will that typically prompt him to stop the nonsense and just say, okay, I'm going?
No, it probably ramps it up.
No.
Really?
The nonsense never stops.
So how often will you guys plan a hike and then Pastor Ken will bail out and you guys just go on your own?
Oh boy.
Oh.
That's 75% of the time.
Oh. Really?
We won't talk about last year, because Dave was the bail king last year. But
it's been a lot of development since the first book.
I think I mentioned in the third book that these guys will look at a weather forecast on Monday for that following weekend, thinking that the weather's going to hold. And so they're like, Monday, they're saying, hey, let's do this hike. And I'm like, I'm not going to budge until Friday, because the weather changes so fast. And then by golly, sometimes the weather holds. And then I'm like, sure, I'll go hiking.
All right. So you two guys, so if I'm understanding the dynamic correctly, you two guys are planning, you've got your weekend plans, and then Ken is essentially just keeping an eye on the weather. And then if the weather window looks good, he'll join you guys. If not, then you're on your own going up there.
Oh yeah, you're getting a good image of it.
Okay.
You need to understand that Ian will plan a hike when it's going to be 95 degrees out. And I've almost died on a couple of those. No respect for his elders. And then sometimes he'll plan Welsh Dicky after a downpour, or while it's raining, with the slippery slab rock, and so or Monadnock, in the rain. I had a nasty fall on that one.
Wow. I know you guys typically, are you limited to hiking on the weekends, or can you plan hikes like midweek in the summer?
We do a little bit of everything, more on the weekends, just because that tends to lend to all of our schedules. But we do things in the summer and during the week. Typically on Fridays, I can take some time off during the summer, during the nice weather, and we'll do some then.
Yeah. When I first met Dave, he was the chief of police in Raymond. And so we had a lot of flexibility. He's since retired, and now he has a real job. And so he can only work on the weekends.
And you're all pretty accomplished and experienced, and you've been there, done that as far as most of the peaks. So, and I'm kind of at that point now where I'm in like second or third season where I've done a lot of the stuff in New Hampshire. And I think through, like last year, I was like, I'm going to focus on Evans Notch. And I did a lot of those summits that I hadn't touched in Evans Notch. And then, I'll focus on certain areas for a while and then go to all those trails and then move on to something else. But do you find that it's more difficult to decide where to go now that you've sort of been there, done that, and hiked a lot of the trails, or is it always just, new places for you to visit?
I think more recently, Ian and I have been focusing on the lists. I don't want to say grid per se, but on mountains that we have done, but not in that season, just so that we're not repeating the same one over and over needlessly. That way, we're accomplishing something down the road.
So far, one of my favorite hikes has probably been when we kind of just looked for an overnight that we want to do, and we did Ethan Pond Trail from Crawford Notch over to Zealand. What an awesome trail that is. Yeah. It's flat. You're not hitting a peak, but we did see people because the cabin, the shelter there was full on a rainy night that we didn't expect. But
that's an interesting chapter, actually.
Yeah.
It's a great lesson in preparedness. Like,
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's nice to not always focus on the list and just kind of pick a spot on the map and let's go check it out.
Yeah.
And Ken, are you a hammock person or a tent person on your overnighters?
Most of our overnighters have just been cowboy camping, just under the stars.
Yeah, that's really impressive.
We either have a little bit of elevation or we're in early fall through fall that there's no bugs to deal with or anything like that.
Okay. And no concern about mice crawling over you in the middle of the night while cowboy camping?
He's scared of mice, but we don't. Me and Ian don't have a concern on that.
Oh, was I not supposed to tell him that was a possibility?
No. I don't know if you read the overnighter on one of the peaks that I woke up and I thought it was a bear that was like sniffing my pack, and I screamed. I sat up and yelled at it like go away. But I think it was just a mouse that was scratching on my pack trying to get in.
Okay.
Because my pack is like right by my head when I do an overnighter. So.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Which makes it scary when I wake up in the morning and these guys have put all their trash in my pack.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And can you talk, Ken, a little bit about your writing process? Like, do you just commit to say, like, okay, I'm going to write 3 pages today and eventually I have a book, or do you just write in spurts?
I mean, I'll do a story at a time. Like, I'll do a trail at a time. So if we do an overnighter, or if it's a solo, or if it's all of us together, I will do that hike and I'll just make a lot of mental notes about it. And then when I get back, I just start putting it together. And usually in a very factual, truth manner.
And do you have an editor or somebody that keeps you grounded? I think one of the things I always worry about with Stomp is that he's going to say something that gets us canceled or gets us in trouble or something like that. Do you have somebody that sort of keeps an eye on you and makes sure that you're behaved in what you're writing?
Yeah, my wife Darlene is usually pretty good. Like, she'll say you can't put that in there, and most of the times I listen to her. Sometimes I don't because it's just too funny, and I have to leave it in there. When I started the first book, like I said, they were independent short stories. And so when I put them together in a book, I really didn't edit that well. That first one wasn't edited that great. So there was a lot of reintroducing of the characters and things like that. The second and third book started getting edited a lot better, more professionally, I should say.
Yeah, and you probably just find your rhythm and your cadence in your writing as well over time, I would guess.
It's amazing. After you write something, you now have like a blind eye to whatever you wrote that may be wrong. And you can review it 100 times and you'll never see that unedited word or that unedited sentence. A fresh set of eyes looking at it definitely picks up, but not all the time. Editing is a tough process. I mean, man, we had this last book, the third book, literally had 2 different editors, and I must have reread it 5 or 6 times and was still finding things that, I was referring to, like, I was referring to getting really early on a mountain, saying that, it was a beautiful sunset. And so, like, there's no writing program that picks up that as being a typo or a bad word because it's spelt right and it sounds right. But in the sentence, it's like I'm talking about getting at a mountain early and seeing a sunset, and all of a sudden you pick up on that and you're like, oh, that doesn't
Right.
read right.
Yeah.
Interesting. You didn't have a deadline for the book, right?
No,
That's good.
No.
'Cause can you imagine having a deadline trying to do all that?
no way,
Yeah. Wow.
no way.
Neat.
Yeah.
And Stomp, you were able to read the book. Unfortunately, I was slammed at work this week, and I haven't been able to fully read the book. I read a couple of chapters, but you had picked out some highlights. Do you want to go through a couple of those and ask Ken about them?
Yeah. Could we do a rapid fire and just talk about a couple of things?
Sure.
I actually wrote down a ton, and then I said, "Oh, I don't want to give away so much here. Let the readers enjoy it." So, but I do have a couple of things maybe we could hit on. In the book, you talk about 10 hiker categories. Would you want to talk about one of those that is your highlight?
Oh boy. I mean, so it's kind of funny. I just started thinking about it, and I don't know. I must have come off a couple trails where, and I'm sure you've seen like the busload of college students, that are going up. It looks like an international convention, and they're usually wearing sneakers and things. So I just, I thought that was funny. I mean, it's dangerous, but I thought it was funny. I made something like that, and then the sort of like the middle-aged housewife hikers. There's a boatload of them. Like, I mean, when you hike, I don't know, what did you guys say? Like, what's the percentage when we hike?
It's a good percentage.
There's a lot of yeah. So, but I wanted to be careful because there are so many of them. I didn't want to get trail mugged or have a hit put out on me.
Lose an eye.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing, actually. I noticed that there was a warning at the beginning of the book regarding your humor. You want to talk about that a little bit? Because it's such an interesting time in the culture with people hemming and hawing about what you can and cannot say. And how did you deal with the humor?
Yeah, I think I just put a disclaimer up there that some of this material may be found offensive. And a few years ago, that used to be called humor. And it's okay to make fun of stuff. And, I make fun of everything and anything. And a lot of times I make fun of myself. And I feel that, if people, if you're going to make fun of other people, you should be able to make fun of yourself as well. So I throw a lot of that in there. And these guys constantly make fun of me. So I get all kinds of good ideas from them. But yeah.
Interesting. Tell me about your experience with PEMI Search and Rescue.
That was quite a hike. First of all, it was a tremendous opportunity to get hooked up with that crew and to actually do a hike with them. When I put a feeler out, I was just thinking about going to a meeting that they do planning, and just getting some insight on how they put plans together. And then I get the invite to actually go and do a hike with them. It was just a wonderful experience. It turned out to be a very cold day. And Dave and I had climbed Mount Jackson exactly on the same day the year before. And it was freezing. What would you say, Dave? How cold would you say was it up on the summit?
Oh boy, on the summit it was definitely 10, 15 below zero. It was one of those days.
The wind was howling and it was just really freezing cold. But it was a great experience hiking with them. I don't know if they normally hike that fast or if that's like a slow rate for them. I was beat. They whipped my butt, but they're very gracious, very kind people, the whole crew. And then we got into the sked training. And that was interesting. And at first they said, "Hey, Ken, why don't you be our patient?" And I was all like psyched. I was like, "Oh, this will be so good for the book." But when they started strapping me into that thing, I just started getting claustrophobic. And I'm like, you know what? I think this is as far as I'm going. They got up to about my waist and I'm like, "Hey guys, this is not feeling too good."
Yeah.
So again, they were very gracious saying, "Okay, this is not for you then. Don't do it."
Right. And for listeners, the sked is a plastic taco. Essentially, you get wrapped up in a plastic taco, and because it's a sled, it moves like a bullet. So, I mean, I had one occasion to get into a litter as a patient. It was terrifying. I can't even imagine what getting a sked would be like.
Yeah. I know. One of the girls that was there, I asked her, I said, like, "Are you guys qualified to give pain meds, like to knock somebody out?" And she said no. And that put me in a quandary because I was thinking, like, if I break a leg, do I get in that thing or do I just die along the side of the trail? And so I think in the book I mentioned, I believe my plan will be is I'll bribe one of them to go into Gorham, score some drugs, come back up, give them to me, knock me out, and then we'll be good to go. But yeah, that was a great hike. It was a great day.
Now, in this book, you also got to spend time with the advanced search and rescue team of Fish and Game. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so Dave and I had gone to a meeting to present them a check, actually. And we met Lieutenant Nealon, who's the overseer of that. And so, again, I just reached out to him looking for material for the book on the same line as with the PEMI group, saying, hey, could I sit in on a meeting? And it was like a week after. And he said the same thing. He goes, yeah, we're actually doing a winter simulation and rescue and training, and why don't you come with us?
Yeah.
So Keith was able to go with me on that one, and we did fire screw up over to Cardigan. And again, just, so much information that the readers will see, like the poles that they use for plunging if somebody's in an avalanche, the beacon systems that they use. It was a really great group of guys.
Mm-hmm.
Ken, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How was the texting negotiation back and forth for both of those hikes?
What do you mean texting?
Were you like negotiating whether you were going to go before, or were you just committed to those ones regardless of the weather?
Oh, he was negotiating.
That's a good question.
After I said I would go, I was pretty much locked in. I had to go.
No backing out on those ones, right?
Not to say that I didn't want to.
Oh my goodness!
Not Cardigan as much, because I love Cardigan. I must have done that like a dozen times at least. But the Jackson one, that was my third trip up Jackson, and that's that's got a good pull to it.
Oh yeah, that last half mile was just unbelievable. Mm. And then you had I guess I'm giving a little bit away here, but you thought that okay, we're not going to the summit, so you were sort of in mind of thinking okay, we're going to go up a little ways, maybe we'll go up to the trail junction of Webster, but then you had to go all the way up, right?
Yeah, it was a shock.
Yeah,
and again, it was really, really, really cold that day. The wind was just ripping, and I've been in some cold weather, but you have those 3 or 4 experiences. I would say the 2 times on Jackson with Dave with the PEMI Search and Rescue, and then with Keith on Mount Success. We did that on a day that it was just brutally cold. I mean, you couldn't be out on the summit longer than 120 seconds, and you wanted to get out of there. Yeah. Yeah.
What advice do you guys have for newer hikers that are just looking at, we get people commenting all the time around, just picked up your show, I'm getting into hiking, I want to learn. If you're a new hiker and you're starting out around this time of the year, what advice do you have for new people as far as gear and picking where to go?
Yeah, just talk a little bit about the winter hiking on Jackson, just to follow up with PK's story. The advice I would give, and me and PK, the day that we did it was in January, the first time, and the forecast was for bitterly cold, 20, 25 miles per hour wind. We actually got to the trailhead. There was some fresh snow, so parking, I have a small car, was hard to get over the snowbank. But once we did, we both were headed up the trail and we're like, wow, it's cold, but there's absolutely zero wind. Unfortunately, when we got to the summit and we poked out onto it, what we discovered was the mountain was shielding the wind, and we got hit with the full force of the wind, which wasn't a problem. We were able to duck out. But here's my advice. I was wearing hiking mittens, a nice pair of hiking mittens. They tend to run small on my hands, so getting my hand into them when they're dry can be a little bit challenging. What I discovered that day is my hands were a little bit moist from going up the hill. I took my hand out of my hiking mitten to use my phone, take a nice video of the wind on the summit, the beautiful snow, and of course you get looking up into the presidentials. I couldn't get my hand back in my mitten. That was it. It had, in that short period of time, had gotten cold enough, but I'm not sure if it swelled slightly from the cold or from just hiking up. Couldn't get it back in. And ultimately, I had to tuck it in my jacket, and PK was able to open a pair of hand warmers for me as we started down. But yeah, it actually became a little painful. So the advice I would give on anybody new looking to do winter hiking, just make sure your mittens, you have plenty of room in them, but keep a pair of hand warmers open. Get them open before you get up top and you begin to take your hand out of your mittens and use your phones.
Yeah.
Technically, I saved his life.
I was thinking the exact same thing. You're a hero.
Yeah.
Oh man! And always have extra pairs of gloves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This time of year, I'd say, especially if it's a new hiker, I would have to say hydration and just learning how to handle, onboarding food beforehand and how they're going to handle that, especially if the hikes get really tough and they start doing some aggressive stuff.
Now, Pastor Ken, you created the 11th Essential, the midnight phone call to your buddies. Could you tell us about that?
So I was doing an overnighter with Dave, and we were on rock ledges, and he was literally like 6 feet away from me. And I got up to use the facilities, got back in my bag, and I felt a bump, and it was my phone. So I immediately thought, well, I'm just going to give him a call. And I never laughed so hard when I could hear it ringing in my hand and ringing it 6 feet away inside of a sleeping bag. And so from that time on, both Dave and Ian silenced their phones whenever they're with I can never reach them. I'll leave them messages, but I can never actually reach them.
That's so funny. Oh my goodness. What's next here? So you guys have a PowerPoint demonstration. Can you tell us about that? Do you take this out on the road and like what is it exactly? And how did that develop?
Yeah, Dave, why don't you share that?
Yeah, we call it Hike of a Lifetime.
Yeah.
It's essentially made up of pictures, and we, of course, talk a little bit through that. But it's really about life. We've equated, and more so PK being a pastor and a lot of the coaching that he does. He brings a lot to the table in terms of self-improvement and just realizing about who you are and just your own journey.
Right.
So we've put together a short presentation about hiking and how it relates to life, and we've actually done it to a fair number of Rotary clubs, which is sort of how we cut our teeth with it. We've done it to a couple of other groups since then.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Ken, I wanted to go back to a listener, Mike, who had sent in this sort of heartfelt note around sort of being involved in hiking and then stepping away from it. He had mentioned that he got sucked into sort of the online community of politics. He didn't mention what sort of details that involves, but I think that people do tend to, especially when COVID came through, people tended to sort of find these dark places where they would get obsessed around, the state of the country, the state of the world, and sort of obsessing about it, and they would get away from things that I think are more healthy and allow for sort of better mental health. And we always joke about you got to go out and touch grass, but I think there is some truth in that. And I wonder, do you have any words for people that are sort of caught in that trap of just being in this sort of doom scrolling internet world, and how to get them away from that and back into getting in touch with nature and getting out there, even if it's not hiking, if it's some other activity?
One of the things I learned in my coaching career, because I'm also a licensed life coach, is we have inside of us what's called a sympathetic system, which is basically we put the foot on the gas and it makes us go. And whether that's looking at Facebook too much or the news too much or anything too much, working too much, the parasympathetic system is the opposite. It puts the foot on the brakes and gets us to slow down. And so a lot of neurologists say that what triggers the parasympathetic system is like getting around animals, like little kittens and things like that, or getting around babies, or especially getting out in creation, and just being, in the woods. It doesn't mean you have to do strenuous hikes. You don't have to hike to presidentials. You can flat hike. You can do hikes in any of our state parks. And it's rewarding getting around water, whether it's the ocean or lakes or rivers. All of those things are very, they're calming, and they just slow you away from the craziness of, the rat race that everybody's in. We as Americans, I've traveled a little bit around the world, and we as Americans are hyper on our hamster wheels are spinning 10 times faster than anybody else in the world. And so to get off of that is necessary. So for this gentleman that, I don't know if he hiked before or if he's thinking about hiking or revisiting hiking, but I would definitely give him a thumbs up and say, yeah, get out there. It doesn't have to be anything strenuous. Get out in the woods and just enjoy creation.
Yeah, and I think that one of the blockers for people And this is why we like the hiking buddies and groups like Alzheimer's and these group hike activities, because it does allow you to connect. You've obviously found your tribe or your crew of people, but I think that's a blocker for some people, that they want to get out there, but they don't have anybody to do it with them. Nobody in their current circle is interested in doing that type of activity, and it's hard to sort of build that sense of community. And I don't know if you have any thoughts or stories, Dave or Ian, about how you were able to, stay involved with different groups that opened up the opportunity for you to find your group of people that you go hiking with.
Yeah, my group, again, kind of just came through Facebook, and I went to Ken's church as a child, so I've just known him my whole life. So that was kind of the easy button for me. I will say that if it wasn't for them, I don't know if, and seeing those posts and having that, I'm definitely more of an introverted person, and I don't think I would just go on a hiking buddies meetup and go meet a bunch of strangers at a trailhead. So definitely kudos to those people. And I'm not sure how you get to those more introverted people that wouldn't go and step out into that group.
What I could say, if there's anybody out there, any of your listeners that want to start hiking, I will rent out one of the goons for $10 a hike. So if you're moderate, Ian's if you want to do the prezzies and run up them, Dave is your guy. If you're geriatric, Keith is the guy for you. And we'll rent them out, $10 a hike. Yeah.
Do you have off the top of your head, do you have the company name that you're gonna create to do this?
Oof, I would have to glean some wisdom from these guys with that, I guess.
I guess it's Rent-A-Goon.
Go Rent-A-Goon. I like. There you go. That's got a gold star to it right there.
Oh my gosh, you guys could compete with the hike. We could basically say you can either go to the hiking buddies or you can go to the Rent-A-Goons.
Yeah, and there's my next story for the next book if I ever write one.
Right.
Yeah,
right. And then, you've got some expertise in this area, Ken. So we had Martin Pisani on a couple times to talk about how hiking is sort of the secret elixir, the fountain of youth, keeps you young. And, you're the most senior member of the crew over there. Can you talk a little bit about whether that's true or not?
Well, Keith has got about 10 years on me. Yep. So I've got about 10 years on Dave, and Dave's got 10 years on 20 years on Ian. Ian's the whippersnapper. But yeah, I mean, I think again, just not being overwhelmed by the stories of the big peaks or the rugged peaks. There's so many trails and so many different hikes that can be geared to anybody's conditioning. And so that's a secret, is there's a lot of sites online. There's a lot of sites on Facebook you can go to and ask questions, and so many people do, what would be a very simple hike to start hiking on? And most of the hiking community is very respectful. There might be some people out there that take some pot shots or try to make fun of things like that, but most people are very respectful, and they'll let you know. Mount Willard is a great one to start off with, or something like that, and get you going. Yeah.
Oh, and that reminds me, I wanted to talk to you about your choice of Mount Willard for that Columbus Day weekend. Why?
Columbus Day weekend?
Wasn't it Columbus Day? Wasn't it the foliage?
It was.
It's a chapter in the book.
Oh, the overnighter?
The overnighter.
Yeah, but Willard with the throngs of people. Why?
Oh, word. So that was supposed to be, actually, I think that was supposed to be one of the pond hikes that we were going to, because I had strained my Achilles tendon. And so my right ankle was in some pain for a couple of weeks. And actually the hiker babes did that to me. They're a brutal crew. So we're all on our way up to do a flat hike, to do an overnighter. And all of a sudden, these guys started talking about Willard. And I think we were driving by it. It was going to save some time from wherever we were going. So the next thing I know, we're off on Willard. And oh my goodness, that was like climbing the United Nations meeting of every nationality was coming down off of that trail.
Yeah. Back to back.
Unbelievable.
It's crazy.
I've never seen I kept a really good attitude because the traffic was bad that weekend. These guys were getting a little hot under the collar, but I was
I didn't mean to hijack that conversation, Mike, but it was just a good segue to that story.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'm curious, who's the designated driver when you guys are heading north?
Ken.
We all take turns. we drove past this place into Waterville Valley, if you want to know, and I was driving.
He had his GPS on in the center of Concord and then turns it off when we get off the exit to make the final descent into this place.
That's because I wanted to stop at Duncan's.
Hey, I got another random question for you guys. I have been pounding the drum talking about how New Hampshire does not, like they don't take advantage of the marketing capabilities of the probably one of the most impressive features of New Hampshire, which is the Hooksett Toll, the Hooksett rest areas. And do you guys ever spend any time down there at all?
No.
The Common Man rest areas, the liquor store, anything like that, or is it too close to you?
You usually meet up in Concord, so we're already past that at that point.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's too bad.
I would say all three of us take turns driving, though, to get back to your question.
Yep.
All four of us sometimes. Well, no, Keith never drives, does he?
Yeah, occasionally. He's driven a couple times.
Yeah. Yeah. Dave can drive, and he can do 85 with a cup of coffee in one hand, a phone in the other hand, and steering the steering wheel with his knees. It's an amazing thing. It is an amazing thing.
Dave, I just will let you know that when I drive up, I'm very concerned about people getting in trouble with law enforcement. So I'm constantly driving at like 50 miles an hour in the left lane just to make sure that no one gets in trouble. So
That's good.
Yeah.
PK's story grows a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Excellent. And then, Dave, you had said that you had did you have an update on the Reach the Beach story that I had talked about last week about Tamworth shutting it down?
Yeah, I don't have an update, but I found it interesting. I read that article. I believe it was in the Conway Daily Sun.
Yep.
And, having run the Reach the Beach and sort of seen how it has grown over the years, it didn't surprise me that they were beginning to run into some issues. It certainly is getting crowded. There's a lot of vans that support the runners now. But sort of the take I was looking at it from is that's a detrimental hit to lose Tamworth because it really cuts off that entire side of the state if they're headed down to Hampton.
Right.
Really interesting. And I was wondering from your perspective what you see as an alternative. And it sort of relates to hiking in that a lot of hikers are runners. There's certainly a crossover in the two areas.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any other alternative because you've got to go down. You essentially are forced to go down Route 16. And then I still think that you have to go through Tamworth. So I don't know if there's a way for you to cut past Chocorua somehow and go into trails, but that would be a long leg.
Yeah.
To cut behind Chocorua and go through. So I don't really know what the alternatives are. They can go west of Tamworth into... there's these dirt roads in these towns west of Tamworth that I'm not even familiar with, but you could certainly do it that way. But it's going to add some distance. So I don't know what they're going to do. I feel like my 10 years or so of doing Reach the Beach, like I haven't really seen a big change in the number of the size of the event, but I think maybe they just changed the timing a little bit so that you go into Tamworth at night. I don't really know. I think ultimately a selectman got upset about like getting stuck in traffic, and there's only 3 selectmen in town, so it's 3 votes.
Yeah.
It's 2 votes, so
Yeah.
it's tough to win. So I'll keep an eye on it and update the listeners on what's going on with Reach the Beach, but it's too bad.
Yeah. From what I understand, the proceeds or still do, I'm not 100% sure, benefit the state parks here in New Hampshire. So hopefully it continues.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Ken, so what's the name of the third book again? Can you give us a plug and tell us how we can buy that?
They said, teach us more. It's kind of funny. So the books are available at the Mountain Wanderer bookstore, at the Bondcliff bookstore up in Littleton, and just recently REI in Concord has picked up my books, at least the first one. The guy didn't even know that I'd written 3, and also on Amazon.
Nice.
Okay.
That's super
and
cool.
preferable for us to buy paper copies, but if we have to, we can buy Amazon.
Yeah, well, you can get the paper copies off Amazon. You can get also Kindle books, electric books.
Got it. Yeah, that's how I get it. I get it on Kindle because I'm lazy.
Yeah, it works.
and impatient as well. Stomp, what else? Anything else we got for the guys?
Well, yeah, let's just wrap up with a little chat about Hiker Babes. Tell us about that organization. I looked into it after you wrote about it. It was just, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah, I don't even know how I met Katie. She's a hot ticket. Well, actually, she camps. She's from Massachusetts, and she camps in Raymond. Her and her husband have a camp in Raymond. Mm-hmm. So she's up for the summers, and she's connected with this organization, and they do tons and tons of hiking. And she got my book. Friend requested me, so we became friends on Facebook. And she was always pushing my books, like to everybody and anybody. She was like the greatest salesman out there, saleswoman. And so, I started seeing all these Hiker Babe posts, Hiker Babes this and Hiker Babes that. And so I just reached out to her, and I was, looking for more material for this third book. And I says, hey, how about, we do a hike? Well, oh my goodness, they were crazy about that idea. Mm-hmm. And there was about 5 of them that wanted to go and couldn't because they were working that day. And so we just got together, and there was 10 of them, and we did Monadnock, and it was interesting.
But it's a national organization, isn't that right?
It is.
Yeah.
It's
so
a national organization.
what's their mission in particular?
I have no idea. I mean, I think it's just for women who are trying to get into hiking and may not know anybody. Kind of like what Ian was saying, like a meetup group. Yeah. That they can meet up with a group of gals that they can feel safe with on the trails, and then do some hikes with them. And
Gotcha.
If there's chemistry there, then there's got to be like 15 of them, I would say, that are pretty tight here in New Hampshire. Like they're always hiking together.
Sure.
And then there's always gals that are coming in and out of that mix. But yeah.
Yeah, we'll provide the link to that because it's a really nice, well done website, and it gives you links to all the events, and I think it's a nice resource for female hikers.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask you how you feel about this. You guys, we've met, and Dave and I have met a lot of like young single girls out there solo hiking. Mm-hmm. We were doing Shelbourne Mariah, and we met a gal that was doing the Appalachian Trail. And she was probably late 20s, early 30s. She was an extremely beautiful girl, all by herself doing the Appalachian Trail. And, right off the bat, like Dave's law enforcement. So right off the bat, like his first question was like, do you feel safe? And obviously they do, but I just don't know if that's, I don't know if that's wise. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, we cover stories all the time. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I think so. My daughter's sort of at that age where she's starting to do a lot of, she does a lot of hiking. She's 21 now, and she's done some solo stuff. And I'm of two minds of it. One is I'm obviously concerned about safety, but number two is I also want her to feel empowered. And I feel like we've worked a lot over the years to sort of educate and get her to the level where she's comfortable going out solo, and she should be proud of it, just like any guy would be proud of going out and hiking solo. But I also like the reality is that you do have to fear for safety.
Yeah, of course. I've come across a lot of younger hikers, female hikers that have that almost like nothing's going to happen to me type of attitude, and I just know that that's not accurate. Like this air of invincibility in this younger generation sometimes that I've come across. Yeah, that's off. For sure. Yeah. It's not realistic.
Yeah, and I don't mean, when I say it's not safe, I don't mean necessarily because of, a sexual attack or a physical attack, but just also injury or inclement weather that, they're facing alone. That's the articles that I did on solo hiking. Whenever I solo hike, I try to make sure that it's in a safe place where there's going to be other hikers. And like I said, not out on some remote thing where nobody's going to, find me or anything like that. So yeah, I guess I can see both sides of it. It is important that you want people to feel empowered, that they can do anything they set their minds to. But
right,
yeah. I actually had a weird situation happen, like on my local trails, like a week or two ago, where there was a lady hiking. She had 2 dogs, and she was like hiking toward. I was running up a hill, and then there's a trail split where you can go straight or you can go right. And I usually go right because there's a longer loop that I run. And she was coming towards me, and then she turned around, and I think she was concerned about the dogs, but maybe not. Maybe she was just concerned about me, because she's like, why is this crazy man running up a hill like this? But she went back up the trail and kind of ran towards the trail, and then took a right up where I normally go. and I could see she was like standing there with her dogs, like maybe 20 feet up that trail. And like, obviously she was waiting for me to go by. So normally I would have taken that right and ran towards her, but I was kind of like, she seems a little freaked out. So I just went straight, and I ended up having to like do some more mileage, but I was kind of just like, well, I don't want to make her nervous. So yeah. I guess anything we can do out there to, I don't know. I sort of was I was questioning myself to be like, well, I had a destination and I normally go that way, and I changed my route just because I was freaked out that she might be freaked out. So,
yeah, I mean, and I used to be scared of dogs and bear and moose and coyote, but now I guess I have to add cows to that list.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So, anything else, Stomp, that we got to cover with the crew here?
I think we're good. So we'll post all the information where people can get a hold of you guys and the books. And you guys have any other comments or things you wanted to mention before we move on to the search and rescue?
You had mentioned something about Cairns. Is that you wanted to talk about Cairns?
Yes. You had talked about Cairns early in the book. And again, it was one of those things I was like, well, did we want to cover that or let the listeners... I'll let you discuss it if you would like, but I thought it was very funny.
Yeah, so I made a comment in there about, a lot of times you go to the beach or you go by a river and these people make these stacks, right? And they're beautiful. I mean, they're like really nice. Sometimes they're balanced and everything like that. But it's probably not a wise idea to do that above tree line because cairns are like the only markers that are visible in the wintertime above tree line. And, if people mess with those, it can have serious consequences to hikers that are depending on those for guidance, especially like, above tree line, the bit like Franconia Ridge or the Presidentials, maybe Moosalak.
Yeah.
So I think I had said something about like, if you play around with those rock stacks in the presence of a winter hiker, that might lead to like a good butt kicking.
Right. Yeah. As you lead somebody off a tall cliff.
200-foot cliff. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's fine. If you're by a river, if you're out the beach or whatever, have fun, build those things, but not up on the mountains.
Yeah. And you also touch upon sacred monorails, but we'll let the listeners get the book to read that one. It's just beautiful. Couldn't agree more.
And do you guys hike outside of, like, I'm actually doing like a big plan with my friend Tom. We're going out to Yosemite in September. Are you at the point now where you're thinking about like going outside of New England and doing some big adventure?
So the only time I had an opportunity to do that was a couple of years ago. I went to go visit my son out in Tahoe, and I hiked a 9,500 footer out there, the basin, and then a ridge walk over to the Castle Peaks. And I had a hard time breathing, to be honest with you. I get small lung syndrome.
I feel like that's just an invented thing.
As well as altitude sickness. But Dave's actually getting ready to do like a 14,000 footer, right, Dave?
Yeah. Recently, my son, or actually a couple of years ago, he moved to Denver. And just last week I went there for a visit, and I scoped out a couple of 14,000 footers, but one specifically is Long's Peak, right out of Estes Park. So that's on my list.
Well, that'll be an adventure.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Do you have any concern about altitude sickness?
So I do a little bit. Going out there to visit him, I haven't felt the effects. I've done some small hikes, Overlook Mountain, and just some ones just outside of Denver, and I haven't felt any negative effects of it. But I'll certainly be careful and make sure that I get acclimated before going out. I stopping just to do the recon on the peak. They're really serious out there. Long's Peak Trailhead has a ranger right at the base of it. They certainly do their due diligence to make sure that folks are well prepared. And they actually suggested that the female ranger that I spoke with, not to really attempt it before July 4th because they're still covered in snow. I mean, they've had a very heavy snowpack this year, but on a normal year, they still have snow well into July.
And he's usually lightheaded all the time, so it's probably...
Oh, great. And do you need a permit, or you just have to pass the ranger at the trailhead?
I do. I think if you're going to camp or overnight out there, you have to check in and get a permit. I'm not sure what that process is, but normally just to hike it, it's just to check in and go.
You can tell them, like, look, I've done all the 52 with the views, sir. I'm prepared.
I floated Ken's name a couple times already.
You did? All right.
That would be
well,
my
there
key.
you go.
Hey, do you know Ken Bosse? I know him pretty well.
That's the move there. All right. So, Stomp, anything else before we move on to search and rescue news?
No, we're good. Thank you, guys. That was really great. So feel free to contribute to the stories that we have lined up here. There's a couple. We have 4. They're really interesting.
So this is the revisit of the Connecticut hiker that we've been talking about, right, Stomp?
Yes.
She's a Connecticut hiker who is, she was reported missing on April 10th after hiking on Japan's Kumano-Kodo Trail. So this is Patty Wu Murad, 60 years old, was reported missing on April 10th when she failed to arrive at her guest house hostel, and they executed a search. And now they're getting on the 2-month mark with no sign of her, unfortunately.
Yeah, the family's calling off the search at this point. I mean, they had done a massive GoFundMe campaign and received hundreds of thousands of dollars after the official search had stopped. They continued on, but there's just no sign of this person. Sad story.
Yeah, they hired a private investigator to help out. They've got the FBI involved working with the Japanese police to get cell phone data in the hopes that they can provide important information. And apparently she is an experienced hiker who had done treks all over the world, but I think something must have went terribly wrong in this one, and she hasn't been located. So that's going to be a sad feeling for the family to have to call that search off. All right, up next here, Stomp, is an article that you pulled. A hiker falls 300 feet from the top of a waterfall in Colorado. Seriously injured hiker.
Not only that, after the 300-foot fall, he falls into a river below and is swept several hundred feet downstream and survives.
Holy smokes.
It's like Aragorn, Lord of the Rings moment.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so 300-foot fall. Can you imagine? Like that's so tall that's enough time for you to think about sort of your life decisions at that point.
Man,
yeah,
crazy.
So 300. So the search and rescue team had to carry him, get him back upstream, and then actually uphaul him back up the 300-foot drop. That was the only way out to extract this person. Man. That's a monumental rescue there. Holy moly. Yeah.
My favorite part of the story, though, Stomp, is that at the very end, they closed the article out. According to All Trails, Judge Fall Trail is a 2.2-mile hike with 462 feet of gain. It's rated as easy and is family friendly.
Holy smokes! You know what? I would love to know though. Did he get the selfie?
I don't know. Was that the cause of it? I don't know.
Oh boy.
Crazy. Okay. All right, Stomp. So this next one here, we can talk about this one a little bit here, I think. So this is one of the early season rescues off of Franconia Ridge that we've seen happen time and time again. So on Saturday, June 3rd at approximately 9:30 p.m., the Hampshire Fish and Game was notified of 2 hikers in distress. One hiker in the party was showing symptoms of mild hypothermia, didn't think that they were going to continue walking. 29-year-old gentleman and his wife, 26-year-old from Franklin, New Hampshire, had started hiking Falling Waters around 1 p.m., and then by 7:30, they had made the summit of Little Haystack. So you're talking 6.5 hours to get up to Little Haystack. And they decided to continue on to Liberty Springs tent site about 2 miles across Franconia Ridge. So that's a tricky trek. So approximately a quarter mile past the summit of Little Haystack. So I'm thinking they hadn't even climbed down that little chimney that you got to get down. They started to feel the effects of being cold and wet as it had been raining off and on all day. They got so cold that they called 911. So this activated a search and rescue from conservation officers and Pemmy Valley Search and Rescue Team. The team responded to Falling Waters Trailhead and began the hike, the 3-mile hike up to their location. So the rescue party arrived at 1:20 a.m. So the hike starts at 1. Call comes in at 9:30. The rescue teams get up to them around 1:20, so it's about three hours or so, which is pretty good. The hikers had been able to make a fire and were equipped with a tent and sleeping bags, but unfortunately they were unable to keep warm and dry due to their clothing, the weather conditions, and their lack of experience. So sleeping bags were soaked from the day's rain. Both of them were wearing cotton, which retains water, keeping your body from being dry. And then the rescuers basically had to provide them with the correct clothes, food, water. And then once they warmed up, they were able to start hiking down. And then they made it down to the trailhead around 6 a.m. So that's a long night.
Yeah.
So
Certainly is.
A lot of things going on here. They got a late start. They've got gear that's not proper for the weather. You've got rain. You've got cold conditions, which is hypothermia. Oddly, they were able to start a fire, which seems very odd to me, but I'd like to know what the deal is there. But, slower pace, I guess, with a late afternoon start. So
You guys have been in situations like this. What's your take? Gear-wise?
Yeah. First thing that comes to mind is that their experience level, I'm assuming, is not up to par for that type of hike and that time of day. The time of day is critical. That's a late start, especially in inclement weather. If you're an experienced hiker and you know exactly where you're going to go, especially on an overnighter, you could probably pull that off, knowing the weather and having the correct gear. But without the experience and without having done something before, that's late in the afternoon.
Yeah, especially like they must not have known what their pace would be because they probably assumed they were going to be up on Little Haystack a lot sooner. I always think when people are going to go hiking and they're going to a tent site that they're planning on getting to the tent site with light still there, and clearly they didn't know what their pace was going to be.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, if that was me and I had a fire going, I guarantee you, not only would I be dry, but everything within 40 feet would be dry. I mean, I would have had a fire going.
Yeah.
It is interesting because it's been rainy and wet. Like, I wonder how they were able to start a fire.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed because that would be, I feel like even with the experience that I have like a waterproof matches and a lighter, but I don't know if I would be able to start a fire in wet conditions in the whites.
It's very difficult.
Yeah. One other interesting tidbit on this is I did pick up that the trailhead stewards were positioned at Falling Waters on the day that this happened, but it's unclear whether or not they got these folks or not, or whether they talked to them. I don't know, but I found that interesting too, is that it is possible they may have even run into some trailhead stewards and talked to them. So,
What time do the trail stewards cut out at?
That's a good question. I was just thinking that.
I don't know. I feel like late afternoon. I would think like by like 2-3 o'clock, they must figure like most people that are going to go hiking have gone.
I would think so.
Not sure. And then this last story. This is a sad story, and this is a hiker that had been very involved in the community. I did not know him, but a very well-known hiker. So 12 p.m. on Sunday, June 4th, New Hampshire Fish and Game was notified of a hiker who was having a medical issue on the Little East Pond Trail in Livermore. 59-year-old hiker had departed from the trailhead at 11 a.m. with a hiking partner. Their intent was to hike to Little East Pond. Unfortunately, around 11:45, the hiker collapsed on the trail. His partner called 911 and began life-saving measures. A backcountry forest manager with the U.S. Forest Service came upon the scene in about 40 minutes and assisted in administering life-saving measures. Conservation officers, Linwood Ambulance, Woodstock Fire Department, Waterville Public Safety, PEMI Search and Rescue all responded to assist. And unfortunately, the hiker succumbed to his medical issue and was not able to be revived. So, Donald Frenette, you're one of our fellow hikers, and unfortunately, he passed away. He was about 1.5 miles from the trailhead, and there's not a lot of details on what happened, but there was a medical incident. So, sad story. I've definitely seen the name around, and I know that he participated and gave some advice on different social media groups and things like that. So, sad to hear.
Yeah, definitely sad.
I got a question for you guys. A lot of times on trailheads, they have these big signs. I don't know who puts them up. I don't know if it's Park Services or the Appalachian Mountain Club, but they have these big maps that they put up of all the trails in that area. Has anyone ever thought about putting like estimated times on those trails? Because a lot of times people come from out of state and they don't realize how big those mountains are and how long it's going to take to do one of those hikes. So that when somebody does show up at 1 in the afternoon or 2 in the afternoon and they read this, let's go up this trail, but the estimated time is, 6 hours round trip or 5 hours or whatever, if that might be a deterrent for some people that aren't prepared.
Yeah, I think that I feel like I've seen some warnings on kiosks in the past where they will talk about start time. But I think the data that I've pulled when it comes to search and rescue, I think, having information on the kiosk around warning people about late starts, I think encouraging people to have a splint with them, 10 essentials, I think headlamp reminders, I've seen those on kiosks before. But yeah, I think that they can always do a better job because a lot of those kiosks, like you look at them and there's like a map that you can barely read and a bunch of white space. So they could probably do a better job there.
I think it's Ripley and maybe Arethusa. They actually have it on the sign right to the parking lot, the estimated hike time on those ones.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Maybe it's just inconsistent.
Yeah, it could be. That'd be an interesting job for like if they were going to hire a summer intern to just focus on signage and consistency in signage. I don't know. They could do that. If anybody's listening from Fish and Game, like hire an intern, that would be a great project.
Yeah, I think the best resource is really the Steve Smith AMC book. That's pretty much everything you need to know. And that is the one thing that is always referred to and stressed. If you're going to go hiking, get the book and read it. Plan your trip.
Unfortunately, I think the apps have taken over the book. Most of the people you see out there, they're using All Trails. They're using Gaia.
Yeah.
And I think that's created a little bit more following than the book used to. Because the book used to be the Bible. It used to be the thing that everybody went to.
Is there an online edition?
Good question.
There used to be an online edition for the AMC, and then I don't believe that they have one anymore. I feel like I read a explanation on why they pulled it previously, but I can't remember why. So maybe that's something that they want to think about in the future.
Definitely.
I do love my Gaia app, though. I buy the book, but I do love my Gaia app.
Gaia app's great.
Yeah. And I think the more you've hiked, the more you can estimate your pace a lot better, but it is important for newer hikers to consider.
Very good.
All right, Stomp, we survived this crew. Jeez.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be tough to manage like everybody talking, but I think we flowed nicely.
Yeah, we sure did. Thanks again, guys, for coming out. And I know it was a long drive, but I think it was a good conversation.
Yeah, you guys should extend an invitation to the hiker babes. Get them on the show.
I think we will, for sure.
Yeah, we're going to have to do that.
Yeah, and we will also, we didn't get to talk about White Mountain Approved, but these guys have a YouTube website where they do gear reviews and things, so check that out on YouTube. And we'll have all these show notes available for everybody. But I do have to just give one last message here for Mount Washington Observatory's yearly fundraiser, Seek the Peak. It returns this summer with the classic Mount Washington Hike-a-thon. This annual gathering of New Hampshire's hiking community is a non-profit Mount Washington Observatory's largest annual fundraiser. Hikers raise funds, earn gear, and celebrate at our Après Hike party on Saturday, July 15th, which is coming up pretty soon. So they have live music, food trucks, gear raffles, beer garden, vendors, and people who care deeply about the trails and an inclusive hiking community. All takes place at the base of the Mount Washington Auto Road. So our hike and Make Friends option supports all ability levels, pairing hikers with similar goals for a trek that's right for you. All hikers are welcome to help raise funds for the Observatory's Summit Weather Station and services like the twice-a-day Higher Summits forecast, educational programs, and research in the White Mountains. Seek the Peak is sponsored by the Great Glen Trails and Eastern Mountain Sports, so learn more and register to hike at seekthepeak.org. And it's a wrap.
All right. We'll see you Saturday at Reckless.
All right.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRPodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words to describe this race. Do we all know what they are? Only one hell!
Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would